So we're looking at championing well-being, which is such an important thing, both in schools and in our home life. And Becky and I are really passionate about this in terms of how we can really support well-being within schools and at home. So I'm going to look at schools and kind of curriculum-based things. And I'm just wondering if you could pop in the chat box, what does well-being mean to you? What does well-being, that word, that term, what does it mean to yourself personally, or what does it mean to your school? If you could just pop some ideas in the chat box for me, that would be fabulous. This is where everyone starts frantically typing. I'm really interested to see kind of what well-being means. It's something that isn't always that easy to define. Just wait a minute. There we go, I've got that chat box up now. So yeah, pop your ideas in the chat box. Feel happy and independent in learning, a holistic view of health, mental, spiritual and physical. Amazing. Thank you very much for those. Any other views of what well-being means to you or to your school? Hi, welcome. Having a good state of mind. Yeah, thank you for that, Alfred. That's fab. Any others? Feeling good or mentally good, balance in life. Oh, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? That balance is often very difficult to get sometimes, but that's brilliant. Thank you, Christian. Well, I asked the same question to some children and young people. So I asked one of the 3-year-olds in a nursery that I visit very regularly, and I worded it slightly differently, of course. And I said, you know, what does well-being mean? We've just done a whole lesson on what it means to feel good and to have those lessons. And I asked a 3-year-old in nursery, what is well-being? What does it mean to have good well-being? And he said, when I play. And I was like, great, playing is a great way to support your well-being, absolutely. I then asked a 4-year-old in reception, and she said, it's when you feel well, when you feel good, I like it. And then I asked an 8-year-old, and they said, when you look after yourself and your friends. And then I asked an 11-year-old, and they said, when you feel down or sad, but you know that you can do things to feel happy again. And then a 15-year-old told me, well-being is when you look after yourself, your mind, your body, and you really care about yourself because you are important. Now, if that doesn't sum up what well-being is, that they value themselves and that they're looking after themselves because they're important, I don't know what more we can ask for, really. But UNICEF in the Child Poverty Report talk really clearly about this. Now, this is quite a dated one, but I feel it's a really important quote here in terms of the true measure of a nation's standing is how well it attends to its children, their health and safety, their material security, their education and socialization, their sense of being loved, valued and included in the families and societies into which they're born. That sense of belonging and inclusion is something that is a thread throughout everything. And I also lecture in special educational needs and inclusion. And this, I think, that sense of belonging is something that's so incredibly important in well-being as well. So we'll have a look at what that kind of looks like in terms of curriculum, but also what we can do as a whole school approach as well as being in our classrooms to really support all of those lovely things that you've said as well: awareness, intentional program effort, enjoying learning, living happily, all of those things that kind of contribute to really great well-being. So thinking then about that UNICEF comment, I'm sure as teachers and parents, you're probably all well aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Bloom's taxonomy, so those kind of skills of thinking. And I am a firm believer that Maslow's hierarchy of needs must come before they can even think about doing any of the Bloom's taxonomy in terms of our support. So those basic needs, those essential things like love, security, food, warmth, shelter, all of those things, feeling safe, are at the utmost kind of crux of everything that we do, making that child feel as though they are in a safe and happy place, somewhere where they're supported and they feel secure. It has to come before any kind of, reasoning in maths or mastery or any of those things, because they have to have that sense of belonging and well-being to be able to really achieve. So that's just something that I always think in schools is something that is really important to have at the back of our minds. And for those who maybe don't see well-being as being a priority, we will look at ways in which academic progress and positive outcomes are really supported by well-being as well. And I've got lots of papers on that as well. If you'd like me to send those, I can send those in the update email after the programme. So where does it fit in? In the UK, we have relationships and sex education programmes. We have Development Matters for Early Years, which has a section on personal social development. But if you are in an international baccalaureate school, if you're PYP, there are units of inquiry that you can include this in. If you have a life skills programme, then this is where wellbeing can be really taught, not just kind of something that bubbles along, but real skills that can be taught. If you have a pastoral care team and they're really aware of supporting wellbeing, that can be another way in which we can fit this into the curriculum. Your behaviour policies might seem a bit strange to think about how that fits in with wellbeing, but if we think about a holistic or a restorative approach to behaviour policies, classroom inclusion and those lovely strategies that you use within the classroom, those kind of universal strategies to make everybody feel as though they're included, that everyone has that access to learning. There's nothing worse, is there, than feeling like you don't understand something but being too scared to say. So all of those kind of lovely inclusion strategies can really support academic progress as well. So whatever your curriculum is, whatever kind of scheme that you use, whatever your objectives are, there are lots and lots of ways that you can include wellbeing and supporting the teaching of wellbeing skills into your curriculum. So I'm a practical girl and I always want to know, great, that's lovely, but what does this actually look like in real life? Because it's very busy in school. We are always, there are so many priorities, there are targets to meet, there are pupils that you're trying to support, there are, lots of celebrations, festivals, whatever that you're planning for. So it needs to be something that is a really well planned program within your school. Now, whether that comes from your PSHE curriculum, whether that comes from your life skills curriculum, maybe this is something you're new to introducing, a wellbeing curriculum. It needs to be something that's really, really been thought about. So it isn't just teachers doing sort of random sessions across the years, but it's something that has a progression right through from your very youngest learners right through to your oldest learners. And thinking about that content. So what is the content they need to learn, but also what are the skills that they need to have the opportunity to practice, or what are those skills that they need to have a think about encouraging? Having that whole school ethos that promotes curiosity and encourages mistakes is really important. I think very often we can get caught up, and pupils can get caught up in getting everything right. And it's a natural thing, and it's it's one of the, we always want to do our best and we want to get everything right, but there is real mileage in getting things wrong. That is where we make our biggest learning steps. It's where we learn the most, is from those mistakes. And there's a beautiful book by Todd Parr, and it's called It's Okay to Make Mistakes, and it's this beautiful picture book. And I use it regularly with sort of Key Stage 2 or older learners as well, because it's a really important message to get across, that it's okay to make mistakes. And actually, we should have an open environment and an ethos where that's okay. It's okay to make a mistake and say, do you know what, I'm going to go back and have a look at that again because I haven't quite gotten that right. And to know that there's a whole host of resources and people that they can use to ask, what have I done here? Can you see where I've gone wrong? A safe space, this kind of links really closely with a safe space for pupils to be heard. If you really think honestly about the way that your school is structured, perhaps you have a school council or you have a school panel, are they really able to make changes? Are their voices really heard? Or is it something that kind of we use as a tick box exercise? And there's no judgments there. School is busy, life is busy. But is there a real, genuine, authentic way to really support their voicing coming through. So for instance, I do an activity with schools where we have a map of the school, and I give all the pupils like little emoji stickers, and I'll go and say to them, okay, I want you to put an emoji sticker on how you feel about each of these places. So places like the cloakrooms, the playground, their classroom, the dinner hall, the outdoor learning area, whatever it might be. If you have that really inclusive kind of emoji style where they're not having to write things, you get some amazing feedback on where are the places where they feel like they aren't as included. Where are the places where they might worry a little bit more, or they might be a bit more anxious? Is lining up in the dinner hall something that really doesn't make them feel good? What can we put in place to be able to support that? So having that really authentic space for pupils to be able to share what they feel and how they feel about certain parts of school is a really key thing. Opportunities for peer work. I think that independent tasks and having that independence and being able to work independently is really important. But we are social creatures, and lots of people really enjoy working together, working as a group. So having opportunities where they can work with people, they can experience a range of different personalities, different styles, is a lovely way to be able to support that. Self-reflection, I think somebody put in an awareness. I love that word of kind of self-awareness. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but having opportunities to reflect and having the time to reflect. I've been very guilty as a teacher of asking a question, then being like, no, no, and no, okay, let's move on then, let's do someone else. But actually taking that time just to say, okay, I'm going to give you a proper 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds to process something, rather than a teacher 10 seconds, which I can be guilty of. Representation and a sense of belonging. Do your pupils see them in the resources that you're using? Isolation and can really be a cause of, poor well-being and not feeling very well. So having representation where they can see themselves in their resources, in the picture books you use, in the work that you do, in the scenarios you choose, that can be a lovely, lovely way to support well-being. Nutritious meal options, bit of a, an obvious one, but having nutritious meal options so they can really nourish their bodies as well is a great way to support well-being. Safeguarding is it's always one of those. So teaching about consent amongst other things, but that can be an important point, and being able to have those very clear understanding of procedures so that if a pupil doesn't feel safe, or if they don't feel like their well-being is very good, that they've got somebody that they know who they can go to. Sometimes just having that key person to talk to is as supportive, as it can get, and it's just a lovely thing for them to know. So how can we teach some of these objectives? I've just pulled out a couple of objectives. Now, these are from the RSHE curriculum, but these can be anything. You can link these to whatever suits. The benefits of physical exercise, outdoor time, community participation, that feel good from doing charity work or being part of a community, encouraging those kind of lovely opportunities to be part of a wider community, to see the impact that kind works, or that being able to support others can do. That's really special, and it's something that creates that sense of the importance of kindness, but also that importance of working together with people to support them. Physical exercise, we don't all have to be runners. I do not love running, I will tell you that. I like to eat cake and read books, but I also know how important physical health is. So for me, I really like to weightlift, or I like to go for walks in the countryside, because that's near where I live. So giving pupils a wide opportunity to explore lots of different physical exercise, physical movement that includes team games, or that is individual, that can happen in small spaces if they live in a small space, they don't have access to green area. Being able to give them all of those opportunities so that they have the choices of things that suit them best is a really powerful tool to support well-being. The importance of self-respect and how this links to their own happiness. I think this is a really key one, and it's quite a tricky one sometimes to teach, but to teach them about, it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone does that. That to respect themselves means that they have boundaries where sometimes they say no, and that's okay too. That's a difficult one as well, isn't it, as an adult, to say no to everything. and to know that that's okay to do that, that no one's going to think any less of you, and to be really articulate with how they feel in particular situations, that if they don't feel comfortable, that we are supporting them to be strong enough to say, I don't like this and I don't want to be part of this, thank you. That healthy friendships are positive and that they don't exclude people. I'm going to go on to a little bit around emotional literacy because I think it links really well here. If we have pupils who can't identify how they feel and they struggle to articulate that, then when it comes to things like friendships, conflict resolution, when it comes to things like saying how they feel in particular situations, or assessing risks around them, don't have to be massive risks, but smaller risks, that can be a real challenge, because if they can't name how they feel, they can't then manage that, or they might find it more difficult to manage that. So having lots of activities around supporting emotional literacy and being able to identify that there are more feelings than just happy and sad. Yeah, that there's more to that, that it's more complex than that, that sometimes when I'm angry, I'm actually frustrated because I'm struggling with something, or when I'm feeling a little bit insecure about myself, that might come out as jealousy, or it might come out as anger towards someone. So all of those more complex emotions and the way that they feel is really important to explore with them. And that can be done through scenarios, it can be done through picture books that just give them that little bit of distancing, so it's not super personal, but it allows them to explore all of those things. And I've mentioned picture books several times, but I am a lover of picture books because I just think you can use the pictures from them, you can use the text, you can make your own. There are so many things you can do. And just a couple of books which I think are fabulous. I will obviously pop these on a little reading list, but Everyone Feels Angry. Really important to know. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. It's how we manage that. That's the key thing. Sometimes jokes aren't funny. When does it stop becoming a joke and actually it's an insult? That's a really lovely one. I love this one. Fergal is fuming, so he's angry, so angry. And this is a really lovely one as well. So I'll put together a little reading list and send that out. And as well as, you know, Becky's resources that she's designed, and there are lots and lots of things that you can use out there. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be little things that you plan throughout your school to really bring well-being into the forefront of everything that you're doing. I've raced through that. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Becky, who's going to just take that to the next step and just lead on from there. Becky, have you got control there?
I think so.
Lovely. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, I want to talk about you for a minute here as teachers. As you probably know, if you walk into a classroom with a sense of well-being yourself, with energy, with clarity, enthusiasm and confidence, you will often see that reflected back in your students. If you're irritable, frustrated and tired, you will often feel that reflected back too. And that's because emotions are contagious. So you need to focus on your own wellness and well-being first. You need to go into that classroom fully up for this session. So please access and accept help and support if you need it. Please take care of your own nutritional needs and your physical health, because as Victoria was saying, they are the foundations and bedrock of emotional well-being. And role model that to the students in your class. Tell them about things you've done to support your own well-being, that you forgive yourself if you've forgotten your notes, that maybe you spent the weekend training for a marathon and you feel so proud of yourself. Talk about your feelings with them. I don't mean tell them every personal detail of your life, but do let them know it's okay to discuss that you're feeling frustrated. It's okay to be kind and patient with yourself. And it's okay and important to take care of yourself and to have a rest. So if you're teaching a class and you're doing something really, really difficult, it's okay to say, right, everyone, let's take 5 minutes, chat amongst yourself. I'm going to stretch and we'll restart. It's really great role modeling if you take care of your well-being, and you know your pupils will be looking at you. They'll be looking at you as probably the second most important adult in their life after their families, to see how you manage things. So if you're frustrated and irritable and that's how you deal with stress, they'll see that that's how you deal with stress. If you take regular breaks, if you use various tools to chill yourself out and start again, they will take their cues from you. So remember how important you are in terms of your well-being, because you matter as a teacher so much, but also remember as a role model, how you manage your well-being is vitally important. Okay, I am trying to move us on to the next page now. Oh, and off we go. So well-being. I have come across many teachers in my time who know how important well-being is, but struggle to fit it into the busy curriculum they have to teach. We really need to link well-being to achievement and absolutely grasp that understanding that if our students don't feel good, they won't achieve their potential. So well-being and achievement are completely linked, and we need to work in partnership with parents and the young people we teach to make sure their well-being is good so that they can achieve their best at school. We try and teach without well-being being supported and in place, and it's not going to happen. There are so many research papers on this that absolutely tell us kids who feel good do well. And that's really key if we want to bring any well-being processes into our schools, that we can argue that point. Well-being has to come first, and when it does, things go really well for our pupils. Okay. Pupil well-being affects a child's ability to manage their stress levels. So if things are getting really difficult, perhaps they'll be able to ask for help if they know that they have a right to that, there's no shame in that, and that it's available. Pupil well-being affects attendance. Kids who are getting enough sleep and eating well will have energy for the day. They'll get to school hopefully on time and with energy for the class. Pupil well-being affects confidence. Kids who respect themselves, who value their own voice, will have the confidence to ask for clarity if they don't understand your lesson, will take opportunities to present their ideas. And that confidence helps them tremendously with their academic progress. When young people feel good, they take more risks. I don't mean reckless risks like drugs or absconding from school in the day. I mean risks with their ideas. They'll perhaps try out for a school football team or have a go at putting their name forward for school council because, as Victoria said earlier, they will understand that not achieving something is not a reflection on them. It's an opportunity to try something new. So when pupils feel good, they will take more risks and they will think more clearly. It's been proven that when your mind is calm, you are 30% more intelligent. One of the very best things we can ever do for students before an exam is teach them to calm down. 10 minutes of yoga or Tai Chi or deep breathing, lovely classical music before an exam does way more to support a student's intelligence than 10 minutes of last minute revision, because clarity of thought enables them to focus and answer questions really well. So teaching kids to be calm will teach them to think clearly, will help them hugely academically. Asking for help we've already addressed, and coping with setbacks is really important. If you have someone do a spelling test and they get 2 out of 10 and they think, well, I'm rubbish at spelling, that fixed mindset will continue with them and they won't even try. If they know that getting 2 out of 10 means they need to get their mind around learning, maybe ask for some more help, maybe do a bit of extra revision, and they have a growth mindset towards learning, they will cope with setbacks, take it in their stride and move forward and progress. So pupil well-being really matters. In your school, you may feel like you cannot possibly squeeze in more lessons around this. How do you teach emotional tools to kids when there's not much time? Well, actually, it's really easy. You can spare 5 minutes to focus on well-being because the results are enormous, and because the impact on a child's ability to be present in the classroom, focused and learning is huge. It's worth it. So you could start your lesson with a little bit of Tai Chi or some yoga poses, some breathing. You could have kids colouring mandalas to help them relax after a busy playtime. You could do a guided visualization to take them to somewhere beautiful and relaxing if everything's got a bit heated and bad-tempered and on a hot day. You could use affirmations. You could have them on the wall in the classroom saying, I can do hard things. I am open to learning. I can work well with my peers. Affirmations tell kids you are capable and be confident. And they're not just something vague that we plucked out the air. Scientifically proven that affirmations work, because when kids have positive thoughts, it affects their behavior and their feelings, and they act with more confidence, more clarity, and they feel capable and strong. So just by having an affirmation your class repeats in the morning, you're going to pave the way for a great lesson. Or have them on the wall and just refer to them occasionally. If people are saying, I can't do this, it's too hard, redirect them to positivity. Grounding exercises, such as getting young kids to stamp their feet and shout out, I am here, stops them thinking about stuff that happened at home or what they're doing later. Helps them be absolutely present in your class. Takes 1 minute. Sharing inspiring stories, whether that's in literacy, in form time, through PSHE, whenever. Inspiring stories of people who have overcome adversity or managed to change the world really impact kids. They love stories. We all love stories of people who've done well. So do use that. And don't forget the power of music. If the kids walk into your lesson, you're playing some upbeat, energizing music, they're going to feel enthusiastic. If things need to calm down, change the tempo, a little bit of classical music can go a long way. So these are little starters that you could begin your class with, or resets if you need to change a mood. And actually teaching kids all of these things and making explicit the power of these tasks to change moods and mindsets is giving kids a range of ideas that they can use themselves when they need to emotionally regulate. So never ever think, please never think you don't have time for this. And also don't feel it has to be isolated to one lesson on emotional well-being. You can do this through every lesson. Even if it's science, you can begin your lesson with some music or end it with some music, or share an inspiring story about a scientist who failed but then found a magic solution out of their failure. Do use these tiny little starters and resets to weave in well-being, so it's part of the young person's everyday. What we don't want is to wait until they're in crisis and then try and teach a child emotional health tools, because they don't think clearly when they're in crisis. The very best thing is to teach them all these well-being ideas and tools, so that when they have a problem, they have some idea of how they can help themselves. You could have kids write up their own kindness story, something they've done that was really kind. This makes them feel good about themselves and reminds them that kindness is always a win-win. That could be in literacy. They could list what makes a good friend. And then as a class, you could reflect on, do they behave this way? Are we treating each other like this? Could be perhaps done in form time. Perhaps in art, they could make a Be Kind poster for the classroom. Maybe they could devise a list of random acts of kindness that could be performed at school or at home. In literacy or drama, maybe they could look at different characters' thoughts and ideas to help develop empathy for other people. This will make your classroom experience run much more smoothly if young people have empathy. And then you could encourage nurturing activities such as helping out in the local community, growing seeds, reading to younger children in the school. This instills a sense of pride and self-respect, which is key to well-being, and also creates a lovely culture in your school. And in science, you could link healthy bodies to healthy minds, because we absolutely need young people to know that if they take care of their bodies through PE or through food technology, perhaps, their minds will feel stronger and clearer. So any subject area you're teaching can have an element of well-being woven into it. And I think that is a really fabulous way to make sure that kids get their daily dose of emotional health education. And when it comes to homework, there are so many things you can do there too. I am a great believer in getting kids off screens and outside into nature. No matter where they live, a little bit of soil, a little bit of sunshine, some cloud watching will calm their spirits and give their busy brains a much needed rest. So nature-based outdoors homework is wonderful for kids' well-being, as is physical exercise, of course. Encouraging kids to have a mood tracker. Maybe you're doing something in maths where you're using a tallying up system or adding things up, get them to track their mood. How many ticks did they get on one day for feeling good? And adding them up over the week. It helps them reflect on how they feel and what they can do to change things if things aren't going well. A self-kindness exercise could be to get them to think every evening, what could they do to help themselves relax? Then feed that back maybe in a story at the end of the week. Decluttering. Now, bear with me on this one. It sounds a bit odd, but encouraging a young person for their homework to tidy their bedroom space or their toy space and then tell you the next day how that felt. We want them to link having clear, tidy spaces with having clear, tidy minds. Maybe in art, they could go home and make a calm collage, sticking in pictures, perhaps, of things that make them feel calm. Knowing what makes us relaxed is really powerful, really, really powerful. And of course, will be different for everyone. In food tech, homework could be baking some bread so they get that kneading going and get attention out of their bodies, the lovely aroma of the bread. Maybe we'll give them puzzles to solve. When children are good problem solvers, they don't dwell so long on their problems, but they attack them with a sense of purpose and think, what can I do about this? So give them some puzzles and then talk about how that can apply to problems. You look at lots of possible solutions, you have a go. If it doesn't work, you try again. If we can help kids be good problem solvers rather than problem dwellers, they are going to feel so much more powerful. So yes, of course, we want to hear their feelings. What Victoria was saying earlier about emotional literacy is key. Name it to tame it when it comes to feelings. We want them to tell us how they feel, but not to get stuck in that. We also want them to be good problem solvers, ask for help if they need it, but attack problems with a can-do approach. We could arrange a kindness bingo where maybe they need to be kind to themselves, kind to their sibling, kind to a family member, and cross each one off as they do and feed back to us at school about how they're going on. Homework is a great way to get some emotional health learning in our kids' lives. There are many things that block well-being, many, many things. Home life is something that we can't do a great deal about. But there's also many things in young people's lives, in the way they think, that block well-being. Often young people will catastrophize. Oh, everything's terrible. I didn't do well in that spelling test. I'm terrible at this. It's awful. I'm going to give up, never try again. We need to remind them that maybe they got 1 mark better than last week. That actually, if they had to rate that problem from 0 to 10, it's only going to be a 3. Yeah. We need to challenge their catastrophizing, help them get perspective. Sometimes young people generalize, and because they did badly perhaps in one test, they'll think they're terrible at that subject. We need to remind them that that was one test only, and that over the year they've done pretty well. So challenge that generalizing. And perfectionism, as Victoria said before, it can be a real problem. Kids that draw something and because they don't think it's perfect, rip it up. Instead, they need to draw something and learn to look at it and think, what could I do better next time? And see that piece of work as a stepping stone to their final bit that they're going to think is great, as a learning point. All or nothing thinking is also a real problem. Some young people will go home from school and say they had a terrible day because one person did not want to play with them at break. Or they might tell you in class that they hate school, it's all awful because they're struggling with reading. We need to help them balance that by looking at all the good things that happen too. That's really important, getting kids to focus on the positives, not just the negatives. And in terms of mind reading, we cannot know what is going on for our students unless they tell us, and they need to know that. So because they're very quiet doesn't mean we're going to pick up those problems at home. And we need to say that to them. I cannot mind read. You tell me if you need help or if something is going on for you. So we can unblock faulty thinking by really considering how these areas can really, really be detrimental to our students unless they are challenged. There are some thoughts that really do block young people and their progress in learning and well-being. They're things like, I can't cope, it always goes wrong, it's too hard, it's not worth trying, it's going to be a disaster, and I am not good enough. I call these red thoughts because we want them to stop. Yeah. And what we want instead is the power of helpful thinking to be absolutely key in our students' mindset. We want them to think, I can cope, you know, or I can ask for help. I can calm down before I take action. I can make good decisions. I can do this. And I can do hard things. Just because it's hard, they can still do it. I can try my best. My suggestion would be that the green thoughts are written up and placed in your classroom. And whenever your students come out with any of these red thoughts, you direct them to the green thoughts, because thoughts affect feelings and feelings affect behaviour. And we want our students to feel strong. And if they tell themselves enough, they can cope, they can ask for help, they can calm down, they will begin to believe it and act that way. So green thoughts and helpful thinking is hugely powerful when it comes to well-being. We also need to hear young people's voices. And there's many ways we can do that. There can be suggestion boxes where they can tell us their ideas, worry boxes where they can pop in their concerns. We can create a check-in time where they can actually come and let us know what's going on for them. And we can make one-on-one availability. There could be a dedicated email address for older students where they could send in a message. We could ask for questions as part of a class, and we must listen first before we tell them they are wrong. We need to respect what they are saying, even if we don't agree with it, and they're right to say that. And we must always ask for their input regarding solutions to encourage their confidence in solving problems and being considered and respected. And with home, we need to keep each other updated, always focused on well-being together, keep child-centred, and have a clear signposting system within our school if a child is really struggling. We do not have to be mental health experts for teachers, that's fine, but we do know that we are very, very important in that young person and their parents' lives, so we need to know where to signpost them to and keep in contact. They need to easily be able to get hold of us. And parents often say, oh, I ring school, I get hold of reception, I can never get the teacher. Parents need to be able to contact us, whether that's through email or, you know, assurances that reception will tell you that day so you know what's going on at home. There are so many things we can do to support children's wellbeing, and I know Victoria and I could talk about this all day. We want kids to be really resilient, and I know you do too, because kids who are robust and resilient cope with the inevitable challenges that life will bring. We have to shine a bright light on emotional health make it key part of everything we teach. We need to role model it. It's probably the most important thing you can ever teach. And lots of helpful links there. And thank you for listening. And back to Bethan.
Thank you so much, both. That was a fantastic webinar with lots of tips for all the teachers on here in order to really champion that wellbeing in your school. We've got time for questions now. I can see that we're quite active in the Q&A box here, so I'll start going through them. For the attendee that's got their hand up, if you do have a question, we'll be taking them on the Q&A box and the chat. So do pop your questions in there, and we'll get around to them now. If we don't get around to them, then please do send your questions to collins.international@harpercollins.co.uk, and we'll be able to answer your questions there. Okay, right, let's start with the questions. So the first one is, how can we know that our students have good well-being, and what are the indicators to show good or bad well-being? And there's also another part of this question that is really valuable as well, but I'll pitch that afterwards. So the first one is, how can we know that our students have good well-being, and what are the indicators of good and bad well-being?
Okay, well,
go for it.
Yeah, I'll start with good well-being, Victoria, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You can just tell, is what I would say. It's a very human and instinctive response to being around someone you know looks well, they've got bright shiny eyes, their skin looks good, and they are well and present and focused and interested. They might not be shouting out the answers to everything because they might be quite shy. You know, different people have different personalities, so it won't necessarily be because their hands up all the time and they're asking for help, but you will get a sense that they're well-being. So trust your instincts sometimes, trust your observations. You will see, because a child that isn't will give off a very different vibe. My son has Asperger's, so he won't be making eye contact with you if he's feeling well. He'll also probably be slumped in his chair, so that's not an indicator. But if he's not happy, you can see it on his face, you can see it in his manner, and it's something very instinctive. So trust yourself as a teacher that you will know.
Yeah, I would add just a little bit to that in terms of, I think the indicators for me from being in a classroom is things like Becky was saying, it looks differently for every child. But if you know that a child is sort of taking little steps or feeling more confident, or they are, you know, if they're shy but they're trying new things, or they have something as simple as, you know, they normally wouldn't try the extension task or a harder problem, but they're going to give it a go. It's little things like that that show you that they're in a really good place. When they're not, then you tend to see sometimes they can be withdrawn, sometimes they aren't playing with the same friends they would normally play with, or there's been a breakdown in a friendship somewhere, or sometimes they can be very isolated. Sometimes it can be that they are visibly very, very sad or distressed a lot. So there are lots of ways you can tell when they aren't. But I think in that, when you get to know them, building relationships is the key thing for everything. Absolutely everything in school, in life, in relationships are key. And when you know that pupil, you will know when they're not okay. Just like with your own peers and staff in your school, you know when they're having a down day. But if those down days continue, then that's when it's a problem. Everyone has a down day, everyone can be sad, everyone can be angry, whatever, but it's how long that goes on for and how that's being managed that I think is really, really key.
Fantastic. And that sort of answers then the next question is, how can we measure or monitor students' well-being? And I think that sort of goes with the techniques that you've said there as well, Victoria. Are there any other ideas of how you could measure's a difficult one to say, but monitor well-being in a classroom?
ask them. I'm a real fan. Just be honest and say, you know, I think having opportunities for reflection, that was one of the things I talked about earlier, but having opportunities for reflection on, you know, how do you feel about this, or how, you know, those check-ins that Becky was talking about, having those little check-ins. And I don't mean necessarily like go and put your name by the happy or the sad or the, it doesn't have to be that visible. I mean, I wouldn't like to be, you know, every day like, hey, I'm on the happy, I'm on the sad, but having those check-ins where they know that they can just come in and say, I used to have some children who would come up to me and say, you know, Mrs. Pugh, can I speak to you for 5 minutes? And we built up that relationship where it was just a 5 minutes of, I'm doing really well today, I'm really, you know, everything's going well, or I came across this and I wasn't sure how to deal with it. So those kind of check-ins and having those relationships where they know there are people to go to can be really vital. Or them having a reflection diary where they, you know, they just have those reflections on things that are happening. It could just be a little something as simple as a questionnaire sometimes, just a check-in. How are you feeling? Is there anything that we can support you with? Can be really supportive. And using like Microsoft Forms and things, because it's anonymous, you can see their name, but no one else can. That can be a great way. You know, is there anything you want me to talk about? If they click the button, you know to go to them. So on a wider scale, you can do those kind of things.
Fantastic. We've got loads of questions coming in now, so I'm just gonna just have a little flick through again. If we don't get around to answering your question, then please do reach out via email, which my colleague Emmanuel has just popped in the chat there, and we'll get around to them. So we've got one that's come through from Mandy. So Mandy says, hi, I'm a primary school counsellor, but I'm pretty new to the role, having come from classroom teaching. Is there a wellbeing curriculum you would suggest to follow or invest in?
Okay.
That one's a big one.
There are lots. I'm working on one with Cambridge International at the moment, which is a whole wellbeing curriculum, and that's not out yet. But I would say to first of all have a look at what are the key challenges within your school, because it has to be bespoke. So, you know, from your area, what are the area, you know, look at local data for sort of public health, look at local data for, you know, for other areas of sort of social issues or anything. And then ask the pupils in your school, you know, or ask the teachers, what are the things that your pupils have come up with, and then build your wellbeing curriculum around those things as a priority. I would certainly start with emotional literacy, all the things that Becky was talking about in terms of, you know, health education, you know, emotional health education. The Create Your Own series that Becky's done would be fab. Lots of brilliant stuff, because if you're a counsellor, I'm assuming you'll be working with intervention groups or small groups, and you can really use the activities and get them to think about those. Yeah. Becky, anything from your...
Yeah, I would just say that when people have asked young people what's the most important thing to them about schools, they always say their relationships. They're not what they're learning, but their relationships. So I think absolutely doing some well-being around friendships, how to be a good friend, you know, how to deal with difficult friendships, what to do about bullying. Can't ever avoid those things when it comes to well-being, because for young people, that's the most important thing about school.
The My Life programme that we developed for primary, was it Mandy asked that question? It has everything integrated. So I was really keen that we looked at actually what happens when friendships break down. And naturally, there'll be times where you do, you know, change friends, you know, or you kind of drift apart and things like that. It's important for pupils and children to know that that's okay, that just because they had a friend, you know, from the first day of primary, whatever, it doesn't mean that that's the same friends they'll have, you know, at the end of primary. And it doesn't mean that they've fallen out, doesn't mean that they're not nice people. It's nothing like that. So with the My Life scheme of work, we really did try and integrate that the whole way through, right from those youngest learners. I think it goes from 3 right through to 11-year-olds, because that was a really important thing. So there's lots of emotional literacy in there. If you're looking for a scheme, obviously you can still adapt it, but those can be used as they can be used in groups, or they can be used individually or with a class. So that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's sort of mapped then to the UK side of that for My Life. So that's another curriculum, Mandy, if that was then of interest for you with that as well. Okay, I think we've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So we've got one here that says, could you please give us some guidance of how to address wellbeing regularly and include it consistently while we have so many other learning objectives and academic curriculum to cover, which is a really good point there. We know it's a busy time for teachers. Are there any tips of how you can sort of integrate this into your curriculum and your teaching, Victoria and Becky?
Yeah, I would say, really importantly, don't be scared of it. Don't think you're delving into mental health and it's got to be complicated and big. As I was saying, just some music, just some movement, just getting outside. You know, these are all really healthy and helpful on a regular basis and can be easily woven into your lesson plan. So just keep it in mind when you're writing your lesson plan. You know, how can we address well-being through this? You know, what element of well-being could we bring into this? Just have it in mind, and it can be easily woven in. And I think it can become a routine and a good habit in your teaching, rather than needing to be really complicated and really difficult. But it does need to be intentional. It does need to be daily, and it does need to be robust. Principle of how you teach is that well-being is at the heart of it, because you will get better academic results and everything else moves more quickly. If you're not having to deal with disputes in the classroom, or distressed pupils, or pupils not attending, or not bringing in the homework because they didn't like to ask for help, that's all time consuming. Sort out well-being, things move much more smoothly, is my opinion. So just keep it at the heart of your thinking when you lesson plan.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it does need to be a whole school approach, you know, and going to your SLT and saying, you know, 15 minutes a day, but with an intentional kind of objective, or an intentional kind of plan of what it is you're going to do an input on, or the pupils are going to discuss, and then building that up to, if you don't do PSHE, or if you have life skills or whatever it might be, you know, an hour a week, because it's so difficult to fit everything in. And, you know, I've been a primary teacher for a long time, and I get that it's very, very difficult, but we have to make steps in making it a priority. So it can be those little restart, you know, the resets and the little starters that Becky was talking about, but also having a plan across the school so that you're building up those skills. And it really does pay dividends in terms of pupil happiness, parent carer happiness, and that's a big thing, isn't it? And also thinking about those distress behaviours and how it links to behaviour. It really is worth it, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think I've just spotted down the bottom, so it's that question was from May, and May also says that they are a literacy coordinator for school as well, so it could be, you know, integrating the reading that children are at the moment. So Becky's got some fantastic books for wellbeing. It can be integrated in that way. There's also wellbeing books sort of integrated into reading programs, such as the Big Cat ones as well. So if that's of interest, then maybe please do reach out and we can sort of point you in the right direction for some recommendations as a literacy coordinator as well for integrating.